The others in the chairs, I remember oatmeal, lukewarm and the color of old bandages, served on a beige plastic tray with a small carton of milk that always tasted slightly sour, even when it wasn't. I remember the nurse's face, brown hair tied tight like a noose, gentle voice, name tag always turned the wrong way so I'd have to ask, and I always asked but never remembered the answer. She'd smile that distant, practiced smile like I was a toddler who'd spilled juice, not a grown man lost in his own mind, and say things like, "You're just tired today, Mr. Halbert," before vanishing down the corridor, leaving me in the endless beige of another day. I don't know exactly when I was brought here. I remember the day blurring with gray light, a rain-smudged window, and the soft hands of strangers steering me forward. No one explained anything. No goodbyes. No family clinging to my hand promising to visit soon. No friends cracking jokes to make it lighter. It was just a cab ride, the thin smell of antiseptic, and then silence, as heavy and absolute as earth packed over a grave. For the first few days, or maybe weeks, I told myself it was a mistake, that my wife would come, that my son would walk through those doors, arms wide, laugh creasing his face and say, "Sorry, Dad, mix up at the hospital. Let's get you out of here." But no one came. No calls, no cards, no familiar faces. I was not left here. I was discarded, tossed away like an old photograph too faded to recognize. And once you realize that, truly realize it, that you are now an inconvenience someone solved with a signature on a form, something inside you begins to die, not all at once, piece by piece, memory by memory, until you are just another occupant in a beige chair, under beige lights, eating beige food off a beige tray, forgotten even by yourself. They call this place assisted living, but that's a euphemism, a gentle fiction told to keep us docile. What they don't tell you is that once you're here, the world outside closes its eyes. You become paperwork, billing codes, a room number written in dry erase marker on a board no one looks at twice. But I notice things. Everyone here notices. At first, you arrive full of questions and routines and memories. Then time softens. The days no longer have edges. The chairs in the lounge rotate occupants like musical chairs, except the music never plays, and no one claps when someone is removed from the game. At first, it was bearable because of the others, the friendships that formed from the desperation not to vanish. Clark had that booming voice, the kind that belonged on a radio dial. Wore the same navy cardigan every day like a uniform. He cracked jokes and told stories that felt so real you could almost smell the cigars and engine grease. We spent what felt like years talking, sharing pieces of ourselves, weaving fragile threads of memory between the endless empty hours. Then one day, gone, just gone. His chair empty, his name no longer on the board, his room scrubbed clean like he'd never existed. And when I asked about him, the nurse tilted her head and said, "I think you're thinking of someone else." Her voice was soft, but her eyes weren't puzzled. They were cold, flat, trained. When I pressed, she just smiled wider and said, "You know, I heard they're serving peach pie for dessert tonight. Doesn't that sound nice?" Then Eleanor. She hummed Moon River under her breath every afternoon and cut out recipes from magazines no one gave her. She'd place them carefully in a binder. Even though we didn't have a kitchen, we used to laugh about it. About the imaginary feasts we'd cook one day, somewhere beyond the beige walls. One morning her humming stopped. Her door was open, her binder gone, her name scrubbed from memory like pencil from paper. I asked the staff. They blinked too slowly. Said there was never an Eleanor. One of them even said, "Are you sure you're not confusing her with someone you knew before? And tonight's ice cream night, vanilla or chocolate, your choice." That word, before, it hung in the air like rot. There is no before here, only during. And then nothing. I began to write things down in a small notebook. Names, phrases, moments, anchors to keep myself tethered. But the notebook started to betray me. Pages went missing. Ink faded overnight. Some days it was in a drawer I didn't remember using. Other days it was gone entirely. Once I found it on the nurse's desk, open, as if someone had been copying it. I never saw it again after that. The worst part? I could feel it happening to me, the thinning, like my mind was a sheet of tracing paper that someone was slowly erasing from the back. I began waking up unsure of where I was, my slippers untouched, the photo of my wife, gone, or replaced with one where her face was blurred out, like a smudged fingerprint on glass. I asked about her, and they said, "You never had a wife," with the casual confidence of someone flipping off a light switch. I didn't believe them, not at first. But belief is a muscle, and here, that muscle withers. I tried watching TV, but the channels flickered and looped the same scenes again and again. I watched the same weather report for 3 weeks before I realized the meteorologist hadn't blinked once. I tried speaking with the other residents, but their eyes were wrong. Too shiny, too still. One man, who I thought was named Frank, looked at me and said, "It's your turn soon," and then turned back to staring at the blank screen in front of him. I don't think he blinked after that. I don't think he moved. One night, I walked into the hallway and found all the room doors wide open. Inside, each bed was occupied by a version of me, older, younger, decaying, asleep, screaming. Some were missing faces, others were sitting up, whispering into the dark. They all turned to look at me in perfect unison. I ran, or thought I did, but the hallway stretched on, longer than it should have, like the building itself had become aware of me and was amused. The staff, they're not right. They move too quietly. They appear before you call for them. They speak in loops, reassurances repeated word for word no matter the question. One day I stood up too fast and saw 2 of them standing together in the hallway, perfectly still, facing one another like mannequins before a window opens. They weren't talking, just standing, listening. I went back into my room and locked the door. It didn't matter, because the lock turned itself open from the outside that night. I'm not dying. I know that sounds strange, but that's what makes this worse. I'm not fading from disease or old age. I'm being erased, systematically, surgically, with intent. My thoughts aren't deteriorating, they're being redacted. My memories pruned like dead branches. This place is a machine, not of healing but of replacement. The staff doesn't care who you were before. They don't ask about your life. They ask only if you're comfortable, if you've eaten, if you've slept. And behind every question is the real question. Are you still useful to the pattern? Because there's a pattern, I see that now. New residents appear precisely when old ones vanish. The rooms are never empty for long. You're not here to rest. You're here to be consumed, recycled, scrubbed, your essence drawn out slowly like syrup from a dying tree. And now, I can feel it. The process is nearly complete. Yesterday, the nurse, one I hadn't seen before, tall, with hands too smooth to be human, entered without knocking, smiled and said, "You've been such a wonderful presence." Then he left the door open. That's how they start the final phase. By leaving the door open. They don't need to close it anymore. They know you're not leaving. Today, my name is no longer on the board. The window doesn't reflect me anymore. The man in the lounge is sitting in my chair, humming Moon River under his breath. He thinks it's just a tune. He doesn't remember Eleanor. I don't know what's next. I only know I won't be part of it. I think that's the point. I think that's always been the point. And the last thing I remember before the door closed itself behind me, without a sound, was the empty chair in the hallway, the one that had been mine, waiting. For the next, I don't know how long I sat there before a woman in a crisp white uniform approached. She smiled, the same tight, hollow smile I had seen 1,000 times, and asked, "And how are we feeling today, Mr. Bennett?" Bennett, that wasn't my name, but when I opened my mouth to correct her, nothing came out. The name I wanted, my name, hovered just out of reach, like a word on the tip of a tongue that never arrives. I searched for it, clawed for it in the dim corridors of my mind. But there was nothing. Nothing but the echo of a name I no longer remembered, and a chair that wasn't mine. I nodded, smiled back, accepted the name they gave me, but somewhere deep inside, a small voice screamed, a voice no one else could hear. It shouted the name I had been, the life I had lived, the people I had loved. It clawed at the walls of my mind, begging me not to forget. I could feel it dimming, growing smaller with every step I took toward the common room. Soon, even that last flicker would go out, and when it did, there would be nothing left but the smile they gave me, the name they chose, and the chair waiting with my shape already worn into the cushion. I would still be here, but I would be gone, and no one, not even me, would remember that I had ever been anything else.